Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the bridge of the U.S. Hyperion, her eyes fixed on the holographic display showing 5 alien vessels approaching from the Carina sector. Their design was unmistakably non-human. Crystalline structures that seemed to flow like liquid mercury, adorned with pulsing energy conduits that reminded her of bioluminescent deep-sea creatures. "Analysis," she commanded, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. This was humanity's first contact with an alien civilization, but not quite how they planned it. Lieutenant Rodriguez's fingers danced across his quantum interface. Vessels match no known configurations. "Admiral, energy signatures suggest advanced plasma-based propulsion, but their weapon systems appear to rely on conventional particle acceleration technology, nothing we haven't surpassed decades ago." The alien ships moved with precision, forming a perfect pentagonal formation. Their intent was clear. This was a standard containment pattern, used by those who believed they held tactical superiority. "They're broadcasting, Admiral. Universal Translator is processing. It's a demand for immediate surrender and submission to the authority of something called the Zarkax Empire." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had spent the last century preparing for this moment, developing technologies that most species would consider impossible, while the rest of the galaxy fought with directed energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. Earth had mastered quantum manipulation, consciousness transfer, and the ability to locally alter the fundamental constants of physics itself. "Send them our standard first contact package," she ordered. "Let's give them a chance to reconsider their approach." The response came quickly, too quickly. The alien vessels opened fire, their particle beams lancing through space toward the Hyperion. To the Zarkax, it must have seemed like an overwhelming display of force. To Sarah, it was almost quaint. "Status of the Schrödinger field," she asked calmly as the enemy fire approached. "Operating at optimal efficiency, Admiral. Quantum uncertainty has been extended to ship scale." The particle beams passed through the Hyperion as if it weren't there, because in a very real sense, it both was and wasn't there at the same time. The ship existed in a quantum superposition, making conventional attacks exercise in futility. "Their sensors must be going crazy," Rodriguez commented with a grin. "We're simultaneously registering as a solid object and empty space." Sarah nodded. "Time to educate our visitors. Deploy the entropy inverters. Targeted demonstration only. I want them disabled, not destroyed." The Hyperion's response was subtle yet devastating. Instead of traditional weapons, it released waves of carefully controlled quantum fields that temporarily reversed the arrow of time within localized bubbles of spacetime. The aliens' energy shields, designed to block external forces, found themselves trying to defend against effects that technically hadn't happened yet. 2 of the Zarkax ships suddenly lost power, their crystalline structures darkening as their energy systems experienced events in reverse chronological order. A third ship's weapons simply ceased to exist. The quantum probability of their presence collapsed to 0. "We're receiving another transmission," Rodriguez reported. They're asking what we are." Sarah straightened her uniform. "Put me through." A holographic display shifted, revealing a being that appeared to be made of living crystal and light. Its faceted eyes widened at the sight of a human. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Fleet. Your attack on my vessel constitutes an act of war against humanity. However, we prefer peaceful first contact when possible. I suggest you take this opportunity to withdraw and return with diplomats instead of weapons." The crystalline being's surface rippled with what might have been fear or awe. "Impossible. Our scans showed your species had barely achieved spaceflight. Your cities still burn hydrocarbons for energy." "A common misconception," Sarah replied. "We found it useful to maintain certain appearances. Your scans showed you exactly what we wanted them to show. Now shall we discuss terms for a peaceful resolution to this incident?" The alien commander's crystalline form shimmered with visible distress. "You could have destroyed us at any time." "Yes," Sarah confirmed. But that's not how humanity prefers to make new friends. Though we're certainly capable of defending ourselves if pushed. She let that sink in before continuing. I'm transmitting coordinates for a neutral meeting point. Send your diplomats. Let's start over properly. As the alien ships carefully retreated, Sarah allowed herself to relax slightly. First contact had been achieved, and while it hadn't gone perfectly, they'd managed to avoid unnecessary bloodshed while making humanity's technological capabilities crystal clear. Send word to Fleet Command, she ordered. Tell them the veil has been lifted. It's time for humanity to take its place in the galactic community. She paused, watching the retreating alien vessels. And somehow, I doubt the Zarkax Empire will be causing us any problems in the near future. The bridge crew chuckled, tension finally breaking. Humanity had kept its true capabilities hidden for decades, appearing to be just another primitive species slowly making its way to the stars. Today, that carefully maintained facade had served its purpose. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were far more than they appeared, and the Zarkax Empire had just learned this lesson the hard way. The Zarkax High Command Centrum blazed with emergency signals, its crystalline architecture pulsing with waves of agitated crimson. Supreme Commander Vextor, his crystalline form clouded with stress patterns, faced the assembled War Council. 3 cycles, he rumbled, his voice resonating through the chamber. 3 cycles since our scout fleet encountered the humans. Now their diplomats dance around our demands while their ships. He paused, geometric patterns of distress fracturing across his surface. The tactical display showed the current situation, where once the Zarkax had maintained undisputed control of the Carina sector, now human vessels appeared and disappeared at will, ignoring established patrol routes and defense grids as if they were merely suggestions. Their technology defies comprehension. Science Director Meltrix admitted, her crystalline form dimmed with embarrassment. The scout fleet's sensor logs show weapons that manipulate probability itself. Defensive systems that exist in quantum superposition. Our entire understanding of physics. Enough. Vextor's interruption sent harmonic ripples through the chamber. The Zarkax Empire does not bow to primitives, no matter what technological tricks they possess. Deploy the main battle fleet, all of it. Hours later, Admiral Chen watched from the Hyperion's bridge as space itself seemed to crystallize. Hundreds of Zarkax warships emerged from their version of faster-than-light travel, their hulls gleaming like faceted diamonds in the starlight. They'd brought 30 dreadnoughts, Rodriguez reported, his hand steady at his station despite the overwhelming numbers arrayed against them. Conservative estimate puts their total fleet strength at around 500 vessels. Sarah nodded, seemingly unimpressed by the massive display of force. Status of the quantum network. All human ships are entangled and synchronized, Admiral. The fleet consciousness is ready to activate on your command. This was humanity's true advantage, not just their advanced technology, but their ability to think and act as one when necessary. Through quantum entanglement and consciousness sharing, human ships could coordinate with perfect precision, their crews temporarily joining into a single unified awareness. They're broadcasting, Admiral. Communications reported. Supreme Commander Vextor demands our immediate surrender and submission to Zarkax authority. They're threatening to reduce Earth to crystal shards. Activate the fleet consciousness, Sarah ordered, her voice calm. As the quantum link engaged, she felt her awareness expand, connecting with every human ship and crew member in the sector. They became one entity, thinking and reacting with the speed of thought itself. The Zarkax fleet opened fire, thousands of energy weapons turning space into a deadly lattice of destruction. Through the shared consciousness, every human ship responded in perfect coordination. They'd moved through impossibilities, their quantum drives allowing them to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Fascinating, Sarah/the fleet consciousness observed. They still think this is about weapons and shields. With a thought, human vessels began their response. The first wave of attack didn't target the Zarkax ships at all. Instead, Carefully calibrated quantum fields began to alter the fundamental properties of space itself. Zones where the speed of light varied, regions where cause and effect became suggestions rather than laws, bubbles where probability collapsed in ways that favored human tactical objectives. Zarkak ships found their carefully planned formations meaningless as space itself refused to maintain consistent properties. Their crystal-based technology, advanced as it was, relied on physics behaving predictably. When human quantum manipulators began changing the basic constants of the universe on a local level, their weapons and defensive systems started failing in cascading waves. "Your ships are impressive," Sarah transmitted to the Zarkak's flagship, her voice carrying the harmonics of the entire human fleet consciousness. "But you're fighting with tools that assume reality is fixed and immutable. We learned to negotiate with it instead." To demonstrate, human vessels began performing maneuvers that should have been impossible. They existed in multiple locations simultaneously, phase-shifted through solid matter, and locally reversed entropy to undo damage as quickly as it occurred. The Zarkak's fleet's attacks became increasingly desperate as they realized their overwhelming numerical advantage meant nothing against an enemy that could simply opt out of conventional physics. Final warning. The fleet consciousness broadcast. "Your weapons cannot harm us. Your shields cannot stop us. We are giving you the opportunity to withdraw before we are forced to demonstrate our offensive capabilities." Supreme Commander Vexter's response crackled with harmonic distortion. "The Zarkak's empire does not retreat. Your reality-bending tricks cannot overcome our numbers and determination." "Numbers," Sarah mused through the fleet mind. "They still think this is about numbers." With a thought, she initiated the next phase of the encounter. Human ships began deploying their probability cannons, weapons that didn't just destroy their targets, but retroactively ensured they had never been constructed in the first place. Zarkak's dreadnoughts began vanishing from space, their crews finding themselves back at their home bases with memories of a battle that technically hadn't occurred yet. Others found their weapons transforming into scientific instruments. The quantum probability of their military nature collapsed to zero. Through it all, not a single Zarkak's life was lost. This wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration, a lesson in the fundamental difference between their approaches to technology and warfare. The Zarkaks sought to conquer physics through force. Humanity had learned to ask it nicely for favors instead. Supreme Commander Vexter's crystalline form had lost its luster, stress fractures visible across his surface as he watched his mighty fleet become undone. Not through destruction, that he could have understood, even accepted, but through impossibility itself. "Status report," he demanded, his voice carrying harmonics of barely controlled panic. "Impossible to determine, Supreme Commander," his tactical officer responded, geometric patterns of confusion rippling across their crystalline surface. "3/4 of our fleet registers as simultaneously present and absent. The remainder report their weapon systems have evolved into something else. Engineering can't explain it." The tactical display told a story that defied comprehension. Human vessels phased through solid matter as if physical laws were mere suggestions. They appeared in multiple locations simultaneously, existed in quantum superposition, and seemed to predict attacks before they were even conceived. Aboard the Hyperion, Admiral Chen and the human fleet consciousness watched the Zarkaks struggle with their new reality. Through their quantum-entangled awareness, every human crew member shared a perfect understanding of the unfolding situation. "They're preparing another attack," Rodriguez observed through the fleet mind, attempting to concentrate their remaining functional weapons on a single point. Sarah allowed herself a moment of admiration for their determination. They still haven't accepted that this isn't about firepower. Initiate the consciousness bridge. Let's show them what they're really facing. The human fleet's next action wasn't an attack. It was an invitation. Quantum fields extended from their vessels, carefully tuned to interface with the crystalline nature of Zarkak's biology. For a brief moment, the alien commander and his bridge crew found their consciousness expanded, allowed to perceive reality as humanity had learned to see it. The universe unfolded before them in all its quantum glory. They saw how humanity had learned to communicate with the fundamental forces themselves, not through domination but through understanding. Where Zarkak's technology fought against entropy, human technology danced with it. Where they saw combat as an exercise in force, humanity saw it as a conversation with reality itself. Impossible, Vextor whispered, his crystalline form resonating with awe and terror. Your species, you're not just using advanced technology. We're asking the universe nicely. Sarah completed his thought. Your civilization tried to master physics through force. We learned to treat it as a partner instead of a constraint. Through the consciousness bridge, the Zarkaks witnessed humanity's true capabilities. They saw the quantum computers that didn't calculate probabilities, but rather negotiated with possibility itself. They observed how human ships didn't just move through space, but rather suggested to reality that they might be better suited elsewhere. Your weapons, Vextor's tactical officer observed with growing horror. They don't destroy. They convince matter and energy that other states of existence might be more interesting. Sarah confirmed. We found that the universe is quite reasonable if you approach it with respect rather than demanding obedience. The consciousness bridge revealed how human quantum technology functioned on a fundamental level. Instead of forcing particles to behave in specific ways, they created conditions where particles found it more convenient to do what was needed. Rather than fighting against the laws of physics, they had learned to file the appropriate paperwork for exceptions. A Zarkak's dreadnought attempted to fire its main weapon array. Through the shared consciousness, they watched as human quantum fields didn't block or absorb the attack. They simply had a polite discussion with probability about whether the weapons had ever been charged in the first place. Reality, given the option, decided they hadn't been. This is why we don't need overwhelming firepower, Sarah explained through the quantum link. We don't fight against the universe. We've learned to submit the proper requests for reality adjustments. The consciousness bridge showed them more. They saw how human ships could temporarily reverse entropy not through brute force, but by suggesting to thermodynamics that it might have missed something in its calculations. They witnessed probability cannons that didn't destroy their targets, but rather helped them explore alternative career opportunities in parallel universes. Your entire civilization, Vextor realized, his voice carrying harmonics of fundamental understanding. It's built on cooperation with reality itself. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. Which is why we're giving you this chance to withdraw. Not because we can't defeat you. We've already demonstrated that. But because we believe in offering the universe and its inhabitants the opportunity to choose better outcomes. Through the quantum link, the Zarkak's commander finally understood the true gulf between their civilizations. His people had spent millennia trying to impose their will on the universe. Humanity had spent their time learning to fill out the proper forms in quantum bureaucracy. The consciousness bridge dissolved, leaving the Zarkaks with an unshakable understanding of their situation. Their mighty empire, built on the principle of domination through force, had encountered a civilization that had transcended the need for traditional warfare entirely. The Grand Galactic Council chamber on Station Nexus hadn't seen such activity in centuries. Representatives from 17 spacefaring civilizations gathered in emergency session, their varied forms filling the ancient hall with a cacophony of worried discussions. At the center of attention stood a holographic replay of the Zarkak's encounter with human forces. Ambassador Lyra of the Ethereal Collective, her form a shifting mist of bioluminescent particles, addressed the assembly. The implications are staggering. For millennia, we believe the Zarkak's empire to be among the most technologically advanced civilizations in known space. Yet these humans, she gestured to the hologram, where a human vessel phase shifted through what should have been impenetrable barriers. Their technology violates every principle of conventional physics, rumbled Kathor, the silicon-based representative of the Mineral Confederation. Our initial scans of their homeworld showed a primitive species barely capable of basic spaceflight. How did we miss this? In her office aboard the Hyperion, Admiral Chen watched the Council transmission with quiet amusement. Next to her, the holographic form of Dr. James Morrison, Earth's leading quantum physicist, shimmered into existence. "They're having trouble processing it," Morrison observed. "Can't really blame them. We spent the last century deliberately appearing primitive while perfecting our understanding of quantum mechanics." Sarah nodded. "The hardest part was learning to stop fighting against the universe's natural inclinations. Every other species we've observed tries to force reality to comply with their demands." The Council chamber's discussion grew more heated as new data arrived. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human ships had been quietly present in numerous systems, their quantum-cloaked observation posts gathering intelligence while appearing to be nothing more than space debris. "They could have conquered us at any time," hissed Representative Solar of the Serpentine Worlds, their scales shifting colors with agitation. Instead, they watched and waited. The question is, why? Ambassador Chen, Sarah's younger sister, stood to address the Council. Her presence was both physical and quantum entangled, allowing her to maintain perfect synchronization with Earth's strategic AI networks. "Honorable representatives," she began, her voice carrying the subtle harmonics of quantum resonance. "Humanity never had any interest in conquest. We developed our technology not to dominate, but to understand. While other species fought to control reality, we learned to listen to it." The holographic display shifted, showing human quantum engineering at work. Council members watched in astonishment as human scientists demonstrated their approach, not forcing particles to behave as desired, but creating conditions where they naturally chose to cooperate. "Your civilizations build weapons," Ambassador Chen continued. "We build relationships, with matter, with energy, with space-time itself. Our ships don't fight against physics. They engage in diplomatic negotiations with reality." The chamber erupted in a mixture of awe and skepticism. The Zarkak's representative, still showing stress patterns in their crystalline form, spoke up. "But why reveal yourselves now? Why maintain the deception for so long?" "Because we needed to understand," the ambassador replied. "Not just the technology, but the responsibility that comes with it. We watched as the Zarkak's empire expanded through force, as the ethereal collective manipulated through subterfuge, as the mineral confederation hoarded resources. We learned from your successes and your failures." The display showed more examples of human quantum engineering. Ships that didn't just travel through space but suggested to reality that they had always been at their destination. Weapons that didn't destroy but rather convinced matter to explore alternative states of existence. Shields that didn't block attacks, but rather helped them find more productive uses for their energy. "What happens now?" asked Kthor, voicing the concern shared by all present. Ambassador Chen's response was measured. "Now, we offer partnership. Humanity has learned that the universe responds better to cooperation than coercion. We extend the same principle to our relationships with other species." The implication slowly dawned on the assembled representatives. Humanity wasn't offering submission or demanding surrender. They were proposing a fundamental shift in how civilizations approach their relationship with reality itself. From her office, Admiral Chen watched the Council's reactions with satisfaction. "They're beginning to understand," she told Morrison. "It's not about technological superiority. It's about learning to work with the universe instead of against it." Morrison nodded, his holographic form shifting slightly. "The real question is whether they'll accept the invitation. Change is never easy, especially for civilizations built on old paradigms of control and dominance." The Council chamber had grown quiet as representatives processed the full implications of humanity's revelation. Their appearance on the galactic stage wasn't just introducing a new player. It was challenging the fundamental assumptions upon which interstellar civilization had been built. 3 months after humanity's revelation to the galactic community, the observation deck of Earth's Orbital Diplomatic Center hosted an unprecedented gathering. Representatives from every major spacefaring civilization stood before the vast windows, watching as human quantum ships perform their intricate dance against the backdrop of Earth's azure sphere. Supreme Commander Vextor, now serving as the Zarkak's diplomatic envoy, had lost the stress fractures in his crystalline form. He stood beside Admiral Chen, watching as a human vessel demonstrated the principles of quantum navigation, not by moving through space, but by politely suggesting to reality that it had always been at its destination. "I still struggle to comprehend it," Vextor admitted, his voice carrying harmonics of wonder rather than the fear it had held during their first encounter. "Your entire approach to technology, to existence itself, it challenges everything we thought we knew." Sarah smiled, remembering their first hostile encounter. "That's because you are still trying to understand it through the lens of control. Watch closely." Before them, a training exercise was underway. A human ship approached what appeared to be an impenetrable barrier of energy. Instead of trying to break through or circumvent it, the ship initiated what humanity had come to call a probability dialogue. "They're not forcing their way through," Sarah explained to the assembled diplomats. "They're having a conversation with quantum probability about whether the barrier needs to be there at all." The barrier seemed to consider this suggestion before elegantly dissolving, not through destruction, but through mutual agreement with the laws of physics. The gathered representatives murmured in amazement. Ambassador Lyra's misty form swirled with interest. "Your ships don't just operate within reality. They negotiate with it. But surely there must be limits." Dr. Morrison, who had joined the gathering, stepped forward. His quantum-entangled presence allowed him to project complex mathematical formulae in the air around him. "The only real limit is our ability to frame the right questions. The universe, we found, is remarkably reasonable when approached with respect rather than demands." The display shifted to show humanity's latest project, the Quantum Harmony Initiative. Teams of human scientists worked alongside alien researchers, teaching them not just the technology, but the philosophy behind it. "The future we envision," Sarah explained, "isn't one of human dominance, but of shared understanding. We kept ourselves hidden not to deceive, but to ensure we could emerge as teachers rather than conquerors." Thor, the silicon-based representative, rumbled thoughtfully. "Yet your power could easily have led to empire. Why choose cooperation?" "Because force creates resistance," Ambassador Chen replied, joining the gathering. "Even the fundamental forces of reality push back against attempts to control them. But when you learn to work with them—" She gestured to where a human ship was demonstrating quantum phasing, its structure temporarily becoming one with the fabric of space itself. The gathered representatives watched as decades of accumulated wisdom were slowly shared. Humanity's quantum technology wasn't just about advancing scientific understanding. It represented a fundamental shift in how intelligent beings could interact with the universe itself. "Your civilization's achievement isn't just technological," Vextor observed, patterns of deep thought rippling across his crystalline surface. "It's philosophical. You didn't just advance your understanding of physics. You changed your relationship with reality itself." Sarah nodded, pleased by his insight. "That's why we're sharing this knowledge freely. The universe isn't something to be conquered or controlled. It's a partner in existence, capable of remarkable cooperation when approached with the right attitude." The demonstration concluded with a synchronized display of quantum ships performing maneuvers that seemed to bend reality itself. But now, the assembled representatives understood that bending wasn't the right word. The ships were engaging in an elegant dance with probability, suggesting possibilities rather than demanding compliance. "The age of force is ending," Ambassador Chen announced to the gathered diplomats. "We invite you all to join us in learning a new way of existing within our universe, not as masters seeking to dominate reality, but as partners in a grand cosmic dance." As the diplomatic gathering concluded, Sarah stood with her sister and Dr. Morrison, watching the representatives depart with new understanding in their varied forms. The galaxy was changing, not through conquest or conflict, but through a fundamental shift in how civilizations approach their relationship with reality itself. "They're beginning to understand," Morrison observed, his quantum-entangled form shimming slightly. It was never about superior technology. It was about learning to ask the universe nicely instead of trying to force our will upon it. Sarah smiled, watching as the Zarkak ships departed, their crystalline structures already showing signs of adaptation to the new principles they were learning. Sometimes the greatest power comes not from domination, but from learning to work in harmony with the fundamental nature of existence. The Earth turned below them, its quantum shield now visible to their allies. Not as a barrier, but as a cooperative agreement with space-time itself to suggest that harmful objects might prefer to be elsewhere. It was the dawn of a new era in galactic civilization, one where the line between the possible and impossible was revealed to be merely a matter of having the right conversation with reality.